Hello again. This week we get a Ford Explorer running a little bit unconventionally. We get the camshaft put in the Fordson tractor block, and we get the fuel line repaired on this Chevy truck. This vehicle was towed in as a no start, which we suspected was a fuel pump, but we wanted to verify that first. So what we've done is we've taken the fuel pump relay out and checked for power, and we do have power at the fuel pump relay. So then what we're going to do, which we have actually already done, is we took a small piece of wire and we're going to jump across the terminals to send power back to the pump. Now by doing that, if the pump were any good, it would turn on, but after we've done this, the pump still does not work. So what we did, since we've never heard the engine run, is we used an external fuel source, an external tank, and we put it in series at the fuel filter, and then we powered the fuel pump from the external tank to get the vehicle running. So you're going to see the students doing that next, and then we'll see how this engine runs, and then the customer can decide if they what they want to do with it, if they want us to put a fuel pump in it, or whatever they decide they want to do with this thing. But again, they bought it, never heard it run, so we're trying to get it started for them.
Get over there, Eddie. Get over back.
This is the connection from the fuel filter. We've added an adapter so we can put on our own rubber fuel line. Here they're adding the rubber hose to that adapter. This is the tank we're using to feed fuel to our Explorer. We're using a jumper wire to power that fuel pump, as you can hear. And now we're going to start the vehicle.
Go ahead.
Now that we know that it runs, we'll see what the customer wants to do with the vehicle.
Go ahead. Beautiful.
You can see right there on that fuel line there's a crack we're going to need to fix. When we were putting up the exhaust, the fuel lines got kinked there and caused it to crack, so we're going to have to take the mounts off, figure out what we're going to do to fix that, but we have to drop the exhaust first. You can really see the crack in this line now. We're going to glass beat it and braze it shut. Rather than waiting on a new fuel line to come in, we're going to go ahead and braze this one shut. So it's all glass beaded and clean and ready to go. We could cut that open and put a piece of fuel line on it with a couple of hose clamps, but that's not the best way to do it. That's not how they originally had done it. And I pulled a few vehicles apart where people have done that, and it does work. It's just not the safest way to do it, especially with fuel. But what we're going to be doing is brazing this. So I've got my brass rod here with flux coating already on it. That helps for it to braze clean and get rid of the contaminants as we're heating it and brazing it. So basically we're just going to melt this all around the fuel line itself, and that should seal it up. Alright, I'm set up here and ready to braze. I got a pair of pliers here just holding it from rolling over. So it's just keeping it stable for me. So we'll get our torch fired up here. We're going to be using our carburizing flame, so it's not as much oxygen. That right there is too much oxygen. That's an oxidizing flame. Back that off a little bit, get a little bit of feather in it. Alright, so we're going to get it hot first. We'll melt some of the brass into it. Be really careful not to heat it up so much that it burns it in two. Let it flow in. That looks good. Just melt the brass right into what's already there without trying to get it too hot and melting everything I've already put in and having it fall apart. There we go. Then as I start putting it in, I'll back off a little bit, give it a chance to cool and get hardened before I start putting more in. Okay, that's almost where I want to be. Then I'll just have to change the position of it, get it rolled over to the other side so we can get it done all the way around. Alright, that's most of it. Now let's see if we can get it rolled over and get the rest of that crack right there. Seems to be pretty stable. Alright, let's get the rest of this melted into this crack here, as long as we're careful. Once it starts going in, that's when you have to take the flame away. Because if you don't, it'll melt it right in two. And it's starting to fill up now, which is good. And we'll be able to leak test this thing once we're done to make sure we don't have a leak under pressure. Alright, so there we are. It's nice and clean on this side. A little bit of trash right there, but I think it's going to be okay. But again, we'll have to pressure test it first. We're going to use our smoke machine to detect if there's any leaks in the brazing that we did. So what that's going to do is introduce smoke into the line itself. As you can see, the smoke coming from our tester here. And then what we're going to do is put it in one end of the line here, and then I'll close off the other with my finger, and then when it's activated, we should see smoke. We should not see smoke actually coming from that brass, but if it were leaking we would see it. So when I take my thumb away from here, you can see a lot of smoke coming out of there. Okay, but we don't see anything coming from the area where we did the brazing. So this is ready to put back on the truck. Dylan's got the fuel line back on our Chevy truck. So now it's time to hook up the battery, turn on the key, and make sure it doesn't leak before we hook the exhaust back up.
Somebody covered this rust in body filler. I'm going to cut it out and weld in a new piece to fix it the correct way.
Backside.
Here Alejandro is sandblasting the inside portion of the fender before he puts in the patch. Once he's done with the repair, he will undercoat the backside.
With the patch panel cut and fit, I'm ready to weld it in.
He finishes off the repair with a skim coat of filler, then it will be ready to prime.
I'm ready to put the camshaft into our Fordson tractor block. I've got it all cleaned off really well. I've got lubrication in the journals in the block for the cam to ride in. So we're going to start putting this thing in. What I want to point out about the camshaft itself is the lobes themselves are very sharp. And the idea behind that is, especially for a lot of older tractors in particular, is it allows the valve to open up as far as it can absolutely open, but with a shorter duration. And that's how torque is developed in these engines. So anyway, that's why it is designed that way. So let's go ahead and get this thing put in. I'm going to be really careful as we're putting it through that the lobes of the camshaft don't mar the journal for the cam. Now this doesn't have actual cam bearings. It actually uses the machine surface of just the cast of the block itself to run it. And they all seem to be in pretty good shape, given its age. I'm going to reach my hand in here in the center, kind of help it along further until we get to the center journal and to the back. Alright, so we get it guided there. There we go. Now our camshaft is in. So now what we need to do is get our cam gear cleaned up and get it installed on the shaft and get it timed.
Next time on Bulldog Builds, we'll have that camshaft timed in our Fordson tractor. We have a vehicle coming in with a dead miss that we're going to try to resolve. And hopefully we'll have that Chevy truck running. See you next week.